So this is a quick look at the Ford Ranger Super Duty, which I think will be a really important vehicle both for fleet users that it's aimed at and also for recreational users. And I've been sent what appears to be some spy shots of what could well be the Ford Ranger Super Duty. We'll get into that in a moment. So what actually is the Ranger Super Duty, and what is Super Duty? Well, it's a range of heavy duty trucks. There's only ever been F250s and above. This is the first time the Super Duty name will have been applied to anything smaller than an F250. And the F150 was always seen as a bit more car-like, a bit more consumer-like, light duty in the US, even though over here Ford marketed it as go big, and it is in fact larger than the Ranger and can tow more, although not carry more. There's been the F250 all the way up to the 750, and its Super Duty is referred to the ability to tow and carry. It's not been about off-road. And this is typically what we think of when we think of a Super Duty truck. It's got a very long wheelbase, wheels right at the back, often got dual axles, it's got towing mirrors, it's designed to carry and tow quite a bit. So what does it look like in terms of Ford's US operations? Well, they've got the Maverick, the Ranger, the F150 and then Super Duty. Within Super Duty they've got the 250, the 350 and the 450, so that gives you an idea of where they position it in the market and what the Super Duty name starts to mean to people. So there's 7 things we know about the Ranger Super Duty. The first one, obviously, it's based on the Ranger, hence the name. 2, we know that the GVM, the max it can weigh, is dramatically increased from around about 3,200, depends on the variant, normal Rangers, up to 4.5, that's plus 1,300. We know it can tow 4.5 tonnes, whether it can actually do it or not, practically with all the weights. We'll come into that in a moment, and that's a significant increase. The gross combined mass is 8,000 kilograms, again we'll come to that. Enhanced off-road capability, we don't know what that means, but we can take some guesses. We know it's aimed very firmly at fleets. That's everything Ford have been saying, all their language, etc. And we know that the Super Duty name means heavy duty in terms of towing and payload, and it's not something I think Ford would take lightly. And the rest of this video is my speculation and guesses. Okay, so extrapolation number 1, payload. We know that the Ranger VX XLT is around 2300 curb, and those are thinking, oh, it will have a bigger engine. Maybe it will have the same engine, maybe they'll even derate it a bit for longer life. Don't know, but don't assume that it's going to be Raptor-like performance. You don't need to have a massive engine. Let's just assume that the thing weighs another 500 kilograms over a standard Ranger, because they're going to have to beef up the chassis, they're going to have to make quite a few changes to get it to that sort of limit. That's 2800. That would give it a payload of around 1700 kilograms, which is way more than any other comparable ute on the market, which would be very, very impressive. So again, that's just my guess. Now, fleets often want big payloads. That is really important, and recreational people just look at the popularity of GVM upgrades. So there's definitely a market for a ute which can do 1300, and I was really disappointed with Ineos when they didn't come out with that sort of payload figure for the Grenadier, particularly the Quartermaster, and also the Kia Tasman. That brought nothing to the market at all. Could have brought big payload. Recreationals want it as well, and you know, it's these 2 vehicles which were the payload kings. The Defender 130 in that heavy duty version could do 1300 kilograms of payload, sometimes I think about 1400, and nothing else could do that. So that's why fire crews bought it, because they could put 4 or 5 guys in it and take some water. You can't do that in a normal ute. And again, the single cab and even the dual cab 79, those are the payload kings. But this vehicle is no longer available. Nobody really wants that. It's not 5-star safety, etc. So there's a real market there to move into fleets which need serious towing capacity, because fleets do not want to do GVM upgrades. Just want to buy the vehicle, that's it, get the warranty and not stuff around. Now, extrapolation to towing. So we've got a 4500 kilogram tow, but the gross combined mass is only 8,000 kilograms, and I don't know why Ford are promoting that figure, because it's not a good look for them, right? So the max weight of the RSD means that's only 3.5 tonnes when towing, excluding towable mass. Essentially what that means is that ideally what you want is your GVM plus your max tow to be the same as your GCM, which is 9,000, and even allowing a bit for TBM, make it maybe 8.5, it's still 1,000 kilograms off, at least 550 kilograms off. And what that means is that your GCM is likely to be the limit for towing, i.e. you're going to put weight into the vehicle, people, kit, accessories, etc., and then you're going to find that you're going to hit your GCM, and that's going to limit what you can tow as opposed to the 4.5 ton tow. Now the other way to do it is not put much into the Ranger Super Duty itself, but then you've got the really unfortunate situation where you're going to have a vehicle which is lighter than 4.5 tons, towing 4.5 tons, and that is really not good, particularly if they haven't increased the wheelbase. So yeah, towing trailer heavier than the tow car is not a good idea. And if you're going to comment about, oh, what about semi-trucks and prime movers, go read my blog post. I'll put it in the description, pinned comment, but we've had enough of that comment, thanks. All right, now I think what we realistically likely to do is, every single time I run the numbers on any vehicle, and BYD Shark is an exception, I find that the best way to look at towing any vehicle is about 3/4 of its maximum load. So the rating here, 4.5 tons, you're realistically better looking at like a 4 ton, 3.8, 3.7 ton tower. That I think is what it will comfortably do, given that GCM and probably some other numbers, as opposed to a 4.5 ton. But that's no different to pretty much any other vehicle on the market. All right, so how could Ford add heavy duty? My view, notwithstanding those spy pics that I've seen, is that I don't think that the base range of geometry is suited for towing and carrying that amount. And the reason is, if we look at what we can put ahead of the front axle, it's not really very much. And Ford's own bodybuilder guide, which I went through when I did the NHVRU analysis, does in fact talk about put all your weight ahead of the front axle and not much behind it, etc. So they're hot on that. And we know that the Super Duty utes tend to have the wheelbase right at the back and a very long wheelbase. So we know this. So the spy shots don't show that, but I think that they should. So one thing that they could do is actually increase the wheelbase. And here's an example of a Ford pickup with that, and you can see how much longer that wheelbase is. You've got huge length there, and what that means is that you can put a lot more ahead of that axle, and it also gives you much better stability when you're towing as well, because the ratio of the wheelbase to the overhang is much less. Here that's about just over 3 meters, that's about 1.5 meters, and that ratio is much better here. So here's what they could do for option 1. We could just add the wheelbase. So this is my extremely clever Photoshop of what it might look like with a longer wheelbase. Really, all I've done is I've just taken the extended cab back and put it on the back of the dual cab, and you can see that starts to look a lot better. I'd much rather be towing 4.5 tons with this than I would with that, simply for wheelbase length and stability reasons. So again, see how much extra weight you can put ahead of the front axle there, and that's really important. So that would increase the tare weight, and we want to bring that tare weight up. We do not want to be towing 4.5 tons with a 2.3 ton truck. We want it to weigh much closer to 3 tons, preferably 5 tons. It gives stability when towing, more weight-headed rear axle, but it doesn't give us that enhanced off-road capability. In fact, the off-road capability gets worse. This vehicle has a terrible ramp over, and it's physically longer. It's got a longer wider turning circle, so that's not going to give us the enhanced off-road capability. Now, of course, Aussie manufacturers have already been extending these things. So here's one from Adaptive Manufacturing. You can see that's what the extended wheelbase looks like there. All right, so what could they do to fix the off-road capability? Well, a few things. Put taller tyres on it, as I've mocked up here. They could put a suspension lift to go in with it, and I think if we look at those spy shots again, that's probably what they've done. They could add a front locker, as they've done in the Raptor, and be really innovative, and air suspension, bring it up and down. That could be a game changer. I love air suspension for towing, makes it so much easier to hook up, keep the vehicle level, etc. And off-road, it's brilliant as well. But again, it just looks like they've got heavy duty leaves in the back of the mock-up, if that is indeed what the Super Duty will look like. So that's one option. Option 2 is much more interesting. Why not just make it a 6x6? Right? Then everyone's problem is solved. Yes, we've got it's heavier, it's super stable when towing. These vehicles, I haven't towed with one, but I've driven. No, I have towed with 6x6s. They are absolutely brilliant for carrying load, and they are brilliant for towing, so that's fantastic. There's more weight ahead of the axle. It's fantastic off-road capability, and it gives you huge payload and tow. You know, something like this with a 4.5 ton GVM and able to tow 4.5 tons, you go, yep, that's absolutely fine. That seems like a great idea to me. Just adding it to this, I'm not really that keen on the geometry. The problem you get here is the length. It would be a bit longer, and the manoeuvrability, although 6x6s don't have as wide a turning circle as you might think if they're designed correctly. And the fuel consumption would obviously shoot up as well, but hey, we're doing a lot of work with this vehicle here. So I have driven a 6x6. This is one of the ones that I've driven, and it is pretty amazing, I've got to say. And that's 2 tons on the back, and just the ability of that vehicle to carry it, going around a corner, braking, accelerating, really impressive. And if you think about it, you've got 4 wheels at the back, which would normally carry the entire weight of a vehicle, so you're almost increasing your carrying capacity. You can think of it in some ways by a complete third. So yeah, really impressive vehicles. I've also driven both of these with trailers on the back with the ADF, and this gives you an idea of what's possible. So curb 4300, GVM 6500, payload over 2 tons, and that's with the 6x6. With the 4x4 version, then this is actually GVM of 4800, curb 34, payload 1400. So, you know, this gives you an idea of what's actually possible with these sort of vehicles. Now, what effect will this vehicle have on the market? Well, first of all, I think that the F-150, I think Ford are saying, oh no, it's a different market. I don't think it is. It's going to be killed with payload, and it's going to be killed with, it's going to be the same towing, and it's going to be improved with payload, and it's going to be improved off-road. So why would you buy an F-150? I'm not sure, really. Possibly it would be cheaper. Don't know, I kind of doubt it. I think probably it will be more luxurious, because if this is aimed at fleet buyers, they're not going to probably make a wild track version of it, whereas they might move the F-150 up market. Either way, I do see for people that actually want to do stuff, the F-150 would not be your choice anymore. Why would you buy it when you can tow as much with the Super Duty? It goes better off-road, and it's got a better payload. Ranger becomes undisputed #1 for heavy fleet. All the time fleet managers are going, geez, I don't know how we're going to fit all of that in a payload of 1,000 kilograms. The answer, Super Duty Ranger, job done, that's it, end of story. Don't worry about GVM upgrades, don't worry about ficking around with an Excel spreadsheet trying to work out that, don't worry about putting your workers on a diet. Ranger Super Duty, problem is solved. And I think it will take a big bite out of the USA Ute sales as well, the Rams, etc., things like that, because now you've got a greater towing capacity. So I think that's fantastic. And the thing about the Ranger Super Duty, it's got the payload, or I'm assuming it's going to get the payload, as well as the towing capacity. The big USA Utes tend not to have great payload, whereas the Ranger Super Duty should. GVM upgrades, if you buy one, you don't no longer necessary, so you keep your warranty. It's all there from the factory. It's fantastic. My life becomes easier. I get all the time people going, oh, I bought this caravan, the vehicle doesn't seem able to tow it, what should I do, etc. Now it's easy, buy Ranger Super Duty, job done. However, what I reckon is Lovells are going to upgrade the GVM to 7,000 kilograms, and then Kedron are going to come out of a 5,000 kilogram and caravan, and my life will just go back to normal, because again, people will then struggle with figuring out weights and how to tow stuff. Alright, so why 4.5 tons? That is a good question. Well, that's the maximum for a car license. Most vehicles are rated 4495 to be 5 kilograms under. So clearly, if you go above that, then that's a light rigid truck license, which is extra training. It's not a lot of extra training, but it's not something people normally have. So that's why they've done it. Now, all vehicles in Australia are classified. In Utes, you've got the NA classification, which is 3.5 tonnes and under. Remember that Grenadier, sorry, Ineos put the Grenadier just over 3.5 tonnes, and that pushes it into a different classification for different tax brackets, and it also has an effect on other things as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. The NB1 is up to NB1 classification after NA is up to 4.5 tonnes, so that is the Ranger SD. NB2 12.5 tonnes and over. And we've also got the NVES scheme. Now I've got a separate video on that, but essentially that is for vehicles 4.5 tonnes and under, and that you're going to be adding an extra emissions tax in effect to every single vehicle underneath that, and that's going to dramatically increase as years go on. Now the interesting thing here is if the GVM is 4,500 kilograms, you could just add an extra 50 to it and bang, it's now into a it's off your car license, but it is out from NVES and therefore immune at the moment from those emission taxes that the government's going to add. Again, see my other video on that. So interesting point to make it 4,500. Now, the classification, whether it's NB1, NB2, or whatever the case may be, does affect a whole bunch of things. The modifications you can do, the safety features the vehicle has to have, the tax, the fuel emission standards, AdBlue, for example, just coming into some of the commercial stuff, the noise, the anti-theft, the lighting, where you can even park the vehicle sometimes, the insurance. So if it does go above 4,500, then you need to be aware that there's differences. I won't go into them now, but light truck owners are aware of that. So here's some of the spy shots which I got sent, and a little bit of video as well. The guy who sent that to me, very, very knowledgeable in the four-wheel drive industry, actually owns a company. He said it's got a big rear diff, leaf rear springs, and it's got wider guards as it was driving along there. And we can also see it's got taller tyres as well. And I'm sure that the drivetrain would be updated with that increased capacity as well. So if that is what it is, then that's okay. I would really have liked to see a bit of a longer wheelbase, but this may not be the Ranger Super Duty, or it might be part of it. It could be a test mule and the real one could have an extended wheelbase, or it could even be 6x6, who knows. Anyway, interested to hear what you guys think of the Ranger Super Duty. Would you buy one? What sort of price would you pay for it? Do you think it should be a 6x6? Do you want it to be an extended wheelbase? Are you happy with what you see there? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.